Did we really land on the moon, or is it the greatest hoax of the 20th century? Welcome to our journey, as we delve into the labyrinth of moon landing conspiracy theories that have intrigued and baffled minds for decades. Some say the shadows on the moon's surface didn't align, indicating multiple light sources, unlike the single source, the sun, we'd expect on the moon. Others question how the Apollo astronauts survived the lethal Van Allen radiation belts that encircle our planet. The conspicuous absence of stars in the lunar photographs and the peculiarly waving flag in a supposedly airless environment are also points of contention. These theories, born from a mix of skepticism and curiosity, have stirred a whirlpool of doubts, leaving many to wonder about the veracity of the moon landing. With these theories, skepticism has been planted in the minds of many. But is there any truth to these claims? One of the main theories is that the shadows cast by the astronauts and objects on the moon are not parallel, indicating multiple light sources like in a film studio. This theory suggests that the moon landing was staged under artificial light, much like a Hollywood production. The basis of this theory is that shadows in the moon landing photographs do not run parallel to each other, as they would under a single light source like the sun. However, this theory fails to acknowledge the complexities of light and shadow. It's important to understand that shadows are not always parallel on Earth, let alone on the moon. Shadows can appear to diverge based on the perspective from which they are viewed. Consider standing in a field at sunrise or sunset. You and your friend's shadows will appear to radiate out from a point, rather than run parallel. This effect is due to perspective, the same principle applied in drawing and painting to give the illusion of depth on a flat surface. Now let's imagine the moon's surface. It's not a perfect sphere, but rather a rough, uneven terrain filled with craters, hills, and valleys. These irregularities can distort shadows, making them appear non-parallel. When light hits a sloping surface, the shadow cast will not be parallel to those on a flat surface. This phenomenon is not exclusive to the moon. It occurs here on Earth too, but we often overlook it because our planet's abundant atmosphere diffuses sunlight, softening shadows, and making their directions less noticeable. In contrast, the moon's lack of atmosphere means shadows are more pronounced, making the effects of perspective and terrain more apparent. So the shadows cast on the moon by the astronauts and their equipment are exactly what we'd expect given the conditions. Hence, the non-parallel shadows theory doesn't hold up against the science of light and shadow. The evidence clearly shows that such shadows are not only possible but likely, given the moon's surface and lighting conditions. Another theory questions how astronauts survived the deadly radiation in the Van Allen belts. Picture this: two donut-shaped regions of energetic charged particles around our planet, trapped by Earth's magnetic field. These are the Van Allen radiation belts, named after James Van Allen, the scientist who discovered them in the late 1950s. The inner belt, primarily composed of protons, and the outer one, made up mostly of electrons, are regions of intense radiation that could potentially pose severe risks to human health. This is the crux of the Van Allen radiation belt theory, a theory suggesting that the astronauts of the Apollo missions could not have survived the journey through these belts to reach the moon. However, science offers a counter-argument. The key lies in understanding the nature of the radiation belts and the measures taken to protect the astronauts. First, let's talk about exposure. The trajectory of the Apollo missions was carefully designed to pass through a less intense region of the belts, reducing exposure time. In fact, the astronauts spent only about an hour in the belts, half an hour going to the moon and half an hour returning. Moreover, the type of radiation in the belts, predominantly protons and electrons, is not as dangerous as other forms of radiation, like gamma rays or X-rays. The Apollo spacecraft were shielded to protect against this type of radiation. Additionally, the human body can tolerate small doses of radiation, and the amount received by the Apollo astronauts was well within safe limits. So, despite the seemingly daunting prospect of passing through regions of high radiation, the astronauts' journey through the Van Allen belts was in fact both feasible and safe, given the protective measures taken and the short exposure time. The Van Allen radiation belt theory therefore falls flat in the face of these facts. Why can't we see stars in the photos? And why does the flag appear to be waving in the airless moon? These questions have fueled the moon landing conspiracy theories for decades. Let's delve into the science behind them. The first theory suggests that if the moon landings were real, we should see stars in the photos taken by the astronauts. But we don't. The truth, however, is less about celestial visibility and more about photographic exposure. The moon's surface is incredibly bright under the sun's direct light, and the astronauts' spacesuits were also highly reflective. To capture these elements without being washed out, the camera settings had to be adjusted to a quick shutter speed and small aperture, effectively making the dimly lit stars invisible in the photos. Now let's flutter over to the waving flag theory. It proposes that the American flag, planted by the astronauts, appeared to wave in the vacuum of the moon, suggesting the presence of wind, which is impossible on the moon. This theory, however, neglects the properties of the flag and pole used during the Apollo missions. The flag wasn't just an everyday flag, it was made of a stiff, nylon material and affixed to a pole that had a horizontal crossbar. When the astronauts were setting it up, the flag's material naturally crinkled and curved, creating the illusion of a wave. Also, remember, the moon has no air resistance to stop the flag from moving once it has been set in motion by the astronauts. Both theories, the absence of stars and the waving flag, are compelling at first glance. But when you delve deeper into the science and photographic techniques of the Apollo missions, they quickly lose their luster. These explanations are not as sensational as a grand conspiracy theory might be, but they are based on solid scientific and photographic principles. The absence of stars and the waving flag theories, thus, fail to withstand scientific scrutiny. If the moon landing was a hoax, why did we stop after Apollo 17? A question often pondered by many. After all, if it was a grand deception, why not continue the illusion? The answer lies not in the realm of conspiracy but rather in the arena of geopolitics. In the heart of the Cold War, the battle between the United States and the Soviet Union was not just confined to Earth, it had expanded to the frontiers of outer space. The moon landing was a statement, a demonstration of technological prowess, and a testament to human ingenuity. But as the geopolitical climate shifted, so did the priorities. The end of the Apollo missions marked the end of an era, but not the end of progress. The legacy of the moon landing extends far beyond the lunar surface. It inspired a generation of astronauts, scientists, and engineers. It paved the way for innovations in technology, advancements in understanding our universe, and the inception of a new era of space exploration. Indeed, the moon landing left an indelible mark on human history. It's not just a story of a man setting foot on the moon, but a story of humanity reaching beyond the confines of our home planet. The end of moon missions was not due to a cover-up but a shift in priorities. The moon landing conspiracy theories have been around for decades, but do they hold any water? Let's take a quick recap of the theories we've debunked today, and the evidence that counters them. First, we address the theory of non-parallel shadows. The claim was that shadows falling in different directions suggest artificial lighting, hence a staged landing. But as we've learned, uneven lunar surface can distort shadows, making them appear non-parallel. Next, we tackled the Van Allen radiation belt theory. Conspiracy theorists argued that passage through this belt would have been lethal to astronauts. However, the short exposure time and the spacecraft's protective shielding made it possible for Apollo 11 to pass through without causing harm to its crew. Then, we confronted the theory about the absence of stars in the photos and the waving flag on the moon's surface. The absence of stars is simply due to the camera's exposure settings, not an indication of a studio set. As for the flag, the apparent wave was caused by the flag's unique design and the way it was unfurled, not by any earthly breeze. Lastly, we discussed the geopolitical shifts that led to the end of manned moon missions, not any cover-up. The extensive data, lunar samples, and images gathered during the Apollo missions are a testament to human presence on the moon, leaving a lasting legacy in space exploration. It's important to remember that these theories, while intriguing, are debunked by the overwhelming scientific evidence and facts. The moon landing wasn't a theatrical production, but an extraordinary achievement of human ingenuity and courage. The moon landing was indeed a giant leap for mankind, not a theatrical production. The conspiracy theories, while intriguing, are debunked by the overwhelming scientific evidence and facts.